Hello, I'm Emma Bell, and I'm the Centre Lead for C4Me, which is the CFEM team at Grimsby Institute. Welcome to this presentation, called One Size Still Does Not Fit All, an exploration of our continuing research at Grimsby. So let's start with a little bit of background. Who are we? We're the C4Me team, the Centre for Maths Excellence at Grimsby. And we've made sure that we emphasise that for part. We're really looking for that excellence to help our research learners. Grimsby Institute is part of the recently formed Tech Partnership. In this academic year, we've merged with East Riding College as well. Grimsby Institute has around 13,000 enrolments across many vocational areas, including T-levels. And this year, we had just under 1,000 GCSE maths entries at our Grimsby and Skegness campuses. Grimsby Institute serves an area which ranks really highly for economic, social and educational deprivation. And in fact, a large proportion of our learners are from 3 wards which rank in the top 4 of these measures. On the whole, across the area, unemployment is higher than the regional and national figures. So what was this research in particular looking for? We identified a subset of learners last year, the Level 3 learners, who've obviously got the potential to pass a Level 2 course, but haven't, they're still enrolled on GCSE Maths. We've continued working with these types of learners this year, identifying barriers to their passing of maths. Our ultimate aim was to create a lasting toolkit, a toolkit that could be used this year, next year, the year after, and even once the CFEM project is finished. We focused our work with a couple of sub-questions. Could we find out what a typical Level 3 learner looks like? And can we produce resources to help support those learners in their vocational areas with mathematics? We all know that literature is quite scarce when it comes to FE and FE maths. So we investigated the maths learner on the whole, looked at those learners forging a new path in FE after being at school for however many years. Could we use that literature to connect the dots between maths and FE? We looked at motivation on the whole, motivation of FE learners, motivation of maths learners, basically pulling in as much as we could. And we also examined the impact of skills boosting on our learners. I'll give you a quick run through of the methodology that we used in our project. Our research went through lots of cycles, the first cycle informing the next cycle, informing the next cycle, making sure that the data that we were collecting was rich and purposeful. Always on our radar were GDPR, ethics, and the informed consent of our learners. And we couldn't go long without mentioning COVID. But the restrictions that were placed on colleges and bubbles and all the things that we had to contend with had to be written into our methodology as well. Made sure that we gathered different types of data, numerical, words, interviews, and all that data added richness to what we were able to find. And that richness over time and through the cycles that we went through with our research meant that we were able to refine our aims and objectives as we went. I'm just going to give you a run through of some of the data that we were able to collect that helped inform our recommendations. So during lockdown, we made great use of Teams and were able to record an interview between myself and 2 success coaches who are pastoral leads within the college. The aim of this interview was to get an initial perspective of Level 3 learners from the staff to see if there were any emerging themes and then refine them in our next cycle of research. The issue of timetabling came up quite a lot. And it was mentioned that if maths lessons, or English of course, were sandwiched between vocational lessons, then it was more likely to have a positive impact on attendance. The success coaches identified family as a typical barrier to learners, and that they were perhaps under a lot of pressure from their family, or saw that an uncle or an auntie didn't get their qualifications and they were all right. The cycle of failure that we're also familiar with was also identified as a barrier by the success coaches in the vocational areas. The learners are defeated. A lack of consistency was also mentioned as a barrier to learning. With the COVID restrictions, we had the moving between face-to-face and remote. It was also mentioned about changing of teachers and changing of timetables, especially at the beginning of the year. The content of the GCSE was perceived as a barrier, in that the things that are covered within the GCSE quite often don't link to the vocational areas, and students find it difficult to see what the point is of what they're doing. Other than the fact that a 4 would open doors, what's the point in doing algebra? We reflected on what the success coaches had said and those emerging themes coming from that interview. We saw that as the first cycle of our research. Using what the success coaches had said, we were able to create some questions. And we took those questions to a focus group of Level 3 learners. We wanted to use this bank of questions with a greater cohort of Level 3 learners. And by using them with a focus group first, we were able to refine them and make sure that the data that we were getting from these questions was rich, and it actually led us to make some recommendations. The 3 questions that we were able to refine were: how does your vocational area encourage you to attend and engage with maths? We wanted to hone in on that link between vocation and maths. Something that came up in the focus group was that the learners were quite resentful of their peers who weren't having to sit maths. So we wanted to see if this was true across a greater number of learners. We wanted to tackle the timetabling question as well. So we said to the learners, we know that you've got to do maths, but if you could choose when you did it, when would that be? At this point, I'd like to talk about the maths motivators that we've got at Grimsby. What we want, alongside all of this research, is to have a greater impact on all of the learners at Grimsby Institute. So alongside going through all those cycles of research, the motivators have a caseload of learners that they help. They see learners that are going through that cycle of failure, that have poor attendance, and that are holding on to become 19 so that they don't have to do maths anymore. They meet learners that have emotional barriers, little or no confidence or self-belief, maths anxiety, quite often tied into the exam system, and also the typical teenage issues of identity and finding themselves. And this year, learners were really worried about COVID, the concerns of catching it, perhaps spreading it to their family, and the fact that they were so often working from home. So this is Maria and Vanessa, our maths motivators. The motivators were able to help with confidence, help with anxieties, help with attendance, help with general well-being, eating and sleeping. So it wasn't just about the research, it was all about the learners as well. By bringing everything together, the work of the motivators, the focus group, the surveys, the interviews, we're able to get a picture of a Level 3 learner and the barriers that they face. The learner is in a cycle of failure. They're waiting till they're 19 because they don't think they're going to pass. Their attendance is low because of their focus on their main vocational area. They have low self-confidence. They struggle to be in classes with lower level students, and also they're very, very concerned about COVID safety. So even though we know every learner is very different, the typical Level 3 resit learners has very specific barriers to them. And we can help with that. Toolkit-wise, we wanted to make sure that our Level 3 learners could see the links between what they were doing in maths and what they were doing in the vocational areas. And what's great is this isn't just specific to Level 3 learners, so we're able to wheel it out across the whole college. We have our Focus 15 wheel, our scheme of learning, where we work through 15 key topics for the GCSE, working closely with each of the vocational areas, we were able to make a wheel for those areas that showed where each of our focuses came up in the vocational courses, whether it was animal care, carpentry and joinery, media. The learners could make that cognitive link between what they're doing in maths and what they're doing in the vocational area. So to sum up, our recommendations. So for level 3 learners, keep those specific barriers in mind. Obviously, we all support all our learners, but focusing that support is really, really vital by keeping those barriers in mind. And we think that the most important thing of all is those links to vocational areas. Everything points to this. Make sure that the learners know why they're doing what they're doing and can make those cognitive links between the maths work and their vocational areas. This is a really small slice of the work that we're doing at Grimsby with the C4Me project. We've shown that one size still doesn't fit all, but there are specific things that a level 3 learner exhibits that we can really help with. Thank you.